Jessica Atreides was born to a plan. The Bene Gesserit crafted her life before she even took her first breath. On the planet Wallach the Nine, her mother, Reverend Mother Gaius Helen Mohiam, brought her into the world. Jessica was not a daughter in any traditional sense. She was a tool. The sisterhood named her Jessica, meaning wealth, though the true fortune was in her bloodline. The Bene Gesserit had a singular purpose for Jessica. She would carry their great hope, the Kwisatz Haderach, a super being, the product of countless generations of breeding and control. Her father, the brutal Baron Vladimir Harkonnen, never knew she existed. Her mother made sure of that. Mohiam sacrificed her first daughter, Jessica's half-sister, to keep the plan intact. That was the cost of perfection. Jessica grew up in the shadow of the sisterhood. They taught her to master her body, her mind, her soul. Every lesson had a purpose. She learned to fight, not with brute strength, but with precision. Her combat instructor pushed her to perfect a slashing kick, making her movements both graceful and deadly. She studied the art of observation, reading people as easily as pages in a book. No motion, no word, no flicker of emotion escaped her. The Ben Gesserit tested her again and again. Jessica endured the Gom Jabbar, the sisterhood's deadly trial of humanity. The needle hovered at her neck, but she didn't flinch. Pain meant nothing. Survival meant everything. She chose eternity, proving she was human and worthy of their trust. Jessica's path was set long before she understood it. She would be given to Duke Leto Atreides, ruler of Caladan, not as his wife, but as his concubine. She would carry his children and further the sisterhood's plans. She accepted this fate without question. To be Ben Gesserit was to obey. But Jessica was more than the sisterhood knew. She would soon break their plan, and by doing so, she would change the fate of the universe. Jessica met Duke Leto Atreides on Caladan. Their relationship was meant to be practical, calculated, a step in the Bene Gesserit's long game. But something unexpected happened. They fell in love, not the fleeting kind of love that fades with time. This was deep, binding, and real. Duke Leto was noble, a man of principle. He ruled with a steady hand and earned the loyalty of his people. Jessica admired his strength. She saw the humanity behind his power. For Leto, Jessica was more than the Bene Gesserit's gift. She was his partner, his equal. The sisterhood had commanded Jessica to bear him a daughter, a link in the chain of their breeding program, but Jessica disobeyed. She gave him a son instead, Paul Atreides, a child born of love, not duty. This act of rebellion sent ripples through the Bene Gesserit's carefully laid plans. It would bring consequences, but Jessica never regretted it. Life on Caladan was peaceful. Jessica raised Paul with the same discipline the Bene Gesserit had taught her. She sharpened his mind, trained his body, and shaped his spirit. Paul was more than just a boy. He was the hope of House Atreides. Jessica knew this. She prepared him for the dangers to come. The Reverend Mother Gaius Helen Mohiam came to Caladan to test Paul. She brought the Gom Jabbar, the same deadly test Jessica had faced as a child. Pain beyond comprehension coursed through Paul's hand, but he endured. Mohiam declared him human, yet her visit carried a warning. She scolded Jessica for bearing a son and reminded her that hardship would follow. Jessica listened but remained steadfast. Then came the summons. The Emperor ordered House Atreides to take control of Arrakis. It was a trap. The Harkonnens, old enemies of the Atreides, were waiting to strike. Jessica and Leto knew the dangers but had no choice. Duty demanded they obey. Jessica left Caladan with the weight of the unknown pressing on her. Caladan had been a sanctuary, but Arrakis would test them in ways no one could predict. She stood by Leto's side, watching their loyalists ready for the journey, her mind already racing through Bene Gesserit lessons about survival and manipulation. Arrakis was not just a new home. It was the center of power, conflict, and prophecy. Jessica knew the stakes had never been higher. Jessica stepped off the ship onto Arrakis, a planet of heat, sand, and secrets. The air was dry, the sun relentless. This was no home. It was a battlefield disguised as an assignment. Yet Jessica stood steady. She had faced worse than hostile weather. Duke Leto briefed her on their new reality. The Harkonnens had ruled this planet with cruelty, exploiting the Fremen and hoarding spice wealth. Now House Atreides would take their place. But this was no honor. It was a trap laid by the Emperor and the Harkonnens, a move to destroy Leto's family. Jessica's first glimpse of the Fremen came in the form of the Shadout Mapes, a wiry, sharp-eyed woman who presented her with a kris knife. The knife was sacred, its blade drawn only for death. Mapes called Jessica the one from Fremen prophecy, a figure destined to lead them to freedom. Jessica said nothing, but the weight of the Fremen's belief settled heavily on her shoulders. Life in the Atreides palace was uneasy. Whispers of betrayal circled like vultures. A secret message arrived, warning Jessica of a plot against the Duke and Paul. It claimed someone close would betray them. Jessica's sharp mind immediately turned to Dr. Yue. She tried to warn Thufir Hawat, the Duke's trusted mentat, but he was skeptical. In the world of intrigue, doubt could be just as deadly as trust. The betrayal came swiftly and without mercy. The Harkonnens attacked under the cover of night, their Sardaukar allies cutting through Atreides' forces. Jessica and Paul were captured. Their captors intended to throw them into the desert, leaving them for the sandworms. But Jessica had not survived the Bene Gesserit trials for nothing. Using her voice, a weapon of tone and command, Jessica turned her captors against each other. She and Paul escaped into the desert, fleeing through dunes as vast as oceans. Duncan, Idaho, loyal to the end, found them and delivered them to the Fremen. In the safety of a Fremen sitch, Jessica found temporary reprieve. But the desert was no sanctuary. It was a crucible. The Fremen were not what Jessica expected. Hardened by the desert, they were fierce, resourceful, and deeply spiritual. They welcomed Paul as their messiah, Muad'Dib, a figure of prophecy. Jessica was uneasy. These prophecies were no accident. They were Bene Gesserit manipulations planted centuries ago. Now they had taken root in ways no one could control. Jessica quickly earned her place among the Fremen. She studied their customs, learned their ways, and earned their respect. But survival came at a cost. Jessica underwent the ritual of the water of life, a poison that only a Reverend Mother could endure. The ritual transformed her. She absorbed the consciousness of countless others and shared her awareness with her unborn daughter, Aaliyah. Jessica emerged changed, both more powerful and more burdened. Paul rose as Muad'Dib, commanding the loyalty of the Fremen. Jessica watched with pride and fear as her son grew into a leader. The Fremen youth plotted to force Paul into uniting the tribes, a dangerous move. Jessica sent Aaliyah to intervene, knowing the stakes were higher than anyone realized. Amid the chaos, Jessica faced personal trials. Gurney Halleck, blinded by grief, accused her of betraying Duke Leto. He captured her, rage burning in his heart. Paul intervened, revealing that Dr. Yue was the true traitor. Gurney's fury cooled, and Jessica's innocence was restored, but the wound remained, a reminder of how fragile trust could be. Jessica gave Paul her blessing to marry Chani, the Fremen woman who had captured his heart. She knew Paul's destiny would not be simple, but she wanted him to have love where she had only duty. Together, they faced the storm of war and the Emperor's arrival on Arrakis. When the dust settled, Jessica witnessed Paul's triumph. He overthrew the Emperor, took the throne, and secured the Atreides' place as rulers of the Imperium. As Paul took the throne, Jessica began to feel her role shifting. She had done her part, but the sands of Arrakis held no peace for her. Paul's rise to power brought both triumph and tragedy, and Jessica couldn't ignore the weight of her losses. Leto, her bond with Aaliyah, and her own sense of purpose. She left Arrakis, retreating to Caladan, believing her part in the Atreides saga was over, but the desert had a way of calling her back. Years passed and Jessica left Arrakis behind, retreating to Caladan. The desert had taken much from her partner, her peace, and even her son Paul, who had disappeared into the sands. She had her reasons for leaving. The Bene Gesserit called her back, and her grandchildren, Ghanima and Leto II, seemed safe under Aaliyah's care. But safety was an illusion, and Jessica knew it couldn't last. When she returned to Arrakis, it was a different world. The Fremen had grown uneasy, their planet shifting under Aaliyah's rule. Jessica's arrival was met with formalities. Aaliyah, Stilgar, and Princess Irulan were there to greet her, but something was wrong. Aaliyah's eyes burned with an unnatural intensity. Jessica, with her Bene Gesserit training, saw the truth. Aaliyah was possessed, lost to abomination, overwhelmed by the personalities she had absorbed in the womb. One of those voices belonged to the Baron Harkonnen. Jessica didn't flinch, but the revelation cut her deeply. This was her daughter, twisted and corrupted. And the danger was clear. Jessica's presence threatened Aaliyah's fragile grip on power. An assassin disguised as a troubadour struck during a public audience, but Jessica's reflexes saved her. Stilgar and the Fedaykin intervened, driving the attacker away. Jessica confronted Aaliyah after the attempt on her life. Their exchange was raw, bitter. Jessica accused her daughter of poisoning the planet in her hunger for power. Aaliyah in turn taunted Jessica with the Baron's voice, mocking her failures as a mother. The tension snapped. Jessica fled Arrakeen with Stilgar's help, sending a message to him later. Aaliyah must face the trial of possession to purge the Baron's influence. Jessica's warning to Stilgar was her final act of defiance against Aaliyah's corruption, but it was far from the end of her trials. While the Fremen wrestled with their own loyalties, Jessica turned her attention to her grandchildren. Ghanima and Leto II carried the future of House Atreides, but their path was as treacherous as the desert itself. Jessica would soon find herself drawn back into the heart of their plans. Jessica found hope in her grandchildren, Ghanima and Leto II. Leto was alive, despite rumors of his death, and Ganima shared their plan to save their family and Arrakis. But Jessica's trials weren't over. Duncan, Idaho, under Leto's orders, abducted her and brought her to Salusa Secundus. There she met Farad'n, heir to House Carino, and his mother, Winsitia. The Bene Gesserit's machinations never ended. Jessica negotiated her release, agreeing to train Farad'n in the ways of the sisterhood. She saw potential in the young Carino, intelligence, ambition, and perhaps even loyalty to the Atreides, but she remained wary. Winsitia's plotting was far from subtle, and Jessica learned of her role in an attempt to assassinate Leto. Back on Arrakis, Jessica reunited with Leto too. He was no longer just a boy. Leto had transformed himself into something beyond human. A sandworm hybrid, a figure of awe and terror. He revealed his golden path, a vision of the future meant to ensure humanity's survival. Jessica struggled to accept it, but Leto's resolve left no room for doubt. He would bear the burden of the Imperium's future. Jessica watched as Leto confronted Aaliyah. The Baron's influence consumed her daughter, pushing Aaliyah to her breaking point. In the end, Aaliyah chose death over domination. It was a tragic end for the child Jessica had once cradled, a stark reminder of the dangers they all faced. Jessica stood as witness to the shifting tides of power. Ganima and Farad'n became the focal points of political tension. Leto, now the God Emperor, announced he would marry Ganima to preserve the Atreides bloodline. It was a calculated move, one Jessica understood but could not fully support. Her family's survival had come at a steep cost. One moment haunted her. Leto's ritual with the water of life would allow Paul's memories to speak through him. Jessica refused to attend. She could not bear to hear her son's voice emanating from her grandson's body. Some lines, even for her, could not be crossed. As the sands of Arrakis shifted once again, Jessica found herself stepping back. Her role was ending. She had shaped the Atreides dynasty, but its future belonged to others now. Ganima, Farad'n, and Leto would carry the family forward. Jessica had done her part, defying the sisterhood, surviving betrayal, and raising a son who changed the universe. She had lived her life in service to others. Now, she would watch from the shadows, her legacy secure. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed, make sure to like and subscribe for more breakdowns of your favorite series in the future.